Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to look into something, well, pretty disturbing actually. A story that really makes you think about the dark side of, ambition and just how crucial it is to be, well, maybe a little vigilant when it comes to our own health.
Absolutely. I mean, the story you shared, it really highlights how unchecked ambition, how that can lead to really devastating consequences.
Yeah, we're going to unpack this case, and it's shocking. It's about a doctor whose goals, well, they were really selfish. Profoundly so, actually. And they ended up having a massive impact on, well, hundreds of people.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but the material you sent over, it details the case of an oncologist, we'll call him Dr. F. And his ambition, well, it wasn't about groundbreaking research or amazing patient care or any of that. It was all about getting rich and getting rich fast. And he was willing to do, well, pretty much anything to get there.
And the way he decided to do that, this is just audacious. He basically decided to tell perfectly healthy people that they had cancer.
Yeah. Just imagine that, going to the doctor, you think everything is fine, and they just drop that bomb on you. You have cancer, when in reality, there's absolutely nothing wrong.
And it gets worse, right? He didn't just stop at the diagnosis. He then went on to administer, well, all sorts of unnecessary treatments, expensive cancer treatments. So this wasn't just some financial crime against, insurance companies.
Yeah.
This was something that directly and devastatingly impacted the lives of his patients.
Absolutely. The financial fraud, $34 million, it's a staggering number. But we can't forget the human cost here. These people, they were told they were dying. They had to live with that fear, the anxiety. And then on top of that, they had to endure these really harsh treatments. Chemotherapy, powerful drugs that, as your source pointed out, they can do real damage to your body, especially when they're not needed.
So we're talking about healthy people being subjected to all the awful side effects of chemo, even though they never needed it in the first place. Just horrific.
Exactly. So, what we're going to do today is try to really understand the scope of this. How could this happen? How could this go on for so long? How was it eventually exposed? And what does it tell us about, the vulnerabilities of our healthcare system? But also about the safeguards, right? The things that eventually put a stop to it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's start unpacking this.
Yeah.
From what we read, it seems like Dr. F, he started out, at least on the surface, he seemed like a reputable oncologist.
Yeah.
But there was this deep dissatisfaction. He wasn't happy with a normal doctor's salary. He wanted wealth.
Yeah.
And that desire for wealth that became his driving force. It basically steered him down this really unethical criminal path.
And it's interesting because what you see here is this almost clinical level of calculation. It seems like he sort of identified a weakness in the system, right? The way insurance companies bill for cancer treatments. And he exploited it, and he did it without any regard for his patients. The sources you share, they suggest that, at least initially, his plan, it worked.
Yeah, worked in the most twisted way imaginable. He just started diagnosing more and more people with cancer, and the insurance payments, they just rolled in. The source mentioned he bought a huge house, 6,000 square feet, expanded his practice to 7 different locations. And it's chilling to think that all of that, it was all built on the suffering of innocent people.
Right, and I think this case really highlights this potential vulnerability where you have these financial incentives in healthcare, and at the same time, you have this inherent trust that patients have in their doctors. We assume that doctors are always going to act in our best interest. Dr. F, he betrayed that trust, all for personal gain.
And the crazy thing is, this went on for 6 years. 6 years of people being told they had cancer, going through these horrible treatments. And all the while, Dr. F, he's just getting richer in his practice. It keeps growing. 553 patients. That's how many people he convinced they had cancer. It's just an unbelievable number of lives affected by this.
It really shows the sheer scale of this fraud, right? $34 million built into Medicare and insurance companies. But it's not just the money, it's the people, all those individuals whose lives were upended by this.
But the story, it doesn't just go on forever, right? Thankfully. In your source material, there's this woman, Monica. She becomes a key figure in all of this. She went to see Dr. F for, well, some kind of health concern. And he, just like that, he diagnosed her with cancer. He even though she didn't have it. And of course, he started her on treatment.
And Monica's experience, it really highlights the terrible reality of this whole scheme. She goes through her first round of chemo, and obviously she feels awful. I mean, that's what chemo does, right? But she didn't need it. It was all completely unnecessary. And then she has this fall, breaks her leg. And it's important to remember, chemo, it's not like a gentle treatment. It's powerful stuff with powerful side effects. And for someone who doesn't have cancer, it just causes harm.
And this accident, this fall, it ends up becoming the catalyst for the truth to come out. Because Dr. F, he was on vacation. So Monica, she ends up seeing another doctor, Dr. So, and that's when everything changes. Dr. So, he examines her leg, but he also takes a look at her overall condition.
And this is where you see Dr. So's, his medical expertise, his intuition really kick in, because he realizes that something isn't right. Monica's symptoms, her overall presentation, it just didn't match up with a cancer diagnosis. It makes you think about, checks and balances in healthcare. Sometimes a fresh perspective, a new doctor looking at the case, that's all it takes to see the inconsistencies.
Exactly. And Dr. So, he tells Monica, you don't have cancer, you never needed chemo, and you should absolutely not go back to Dr. F. And that interaction, it sparks something in Dr. So. He starts looking into Dr. F's other patient records.
And what he finds, it confirms his suspicions.
Yeah.
His medical knowledge allows him to spot these patterns, inconsistencies in the records. And these suggest that this misdiagnosis, it wasn't just a one-time thing, this was something much bigger.
And then another crucial person enters the picture, George. He was the office manager at Dr. F's practice. And there's this conversation where George overhears Dr. Soul talking about, leaving the clinic because some shady stuff going on. And that, it makes George really worried.
George's role here is so important. He's an insider. He has access to information, and he clearly has a strong sense of right and wrong. His decision to dig deeper, to look at records, talk to staff, that takes courage. And it really makes you think about whistleblowers in healthcare. Were there other points in the system where Dr. F could have been stopped sooner? What does this tell us about oversight?
And it wasn't just a feeling for George. He gathered evidence, tons of it. And once he pieced together what was really going on, he went straight to the FBI.
He did the right thing. And it's a reminder that if you see something wrong, you have to speak up. George's actions, they were the catalyst for the investigation that brought Dr. F down.
And the FBI, they took this seriously. They got the Medicare Fraud Strike Force involved. That's a special unit dedicated to, exactly this kind of healthcare fraud. They looked at George's evidence, and they uncovered the full scope of the scheme. $34 million. 553 victims. 6 years. Just think about that number. 553 people. The sheer number of fraudulent claims, all the interactions that must have happened, it's staggering. It shows how systematic this all was.
And the FBI getting involved so quickly, the Medicare Fraud Strike Force, it shows how seriously they take healthcare fraud. The resources they have to investigate these complex cases. And their findings, they just confirmed everything. The scale of it, how long it had been going on.
And the consequences for Dr. F, they came quickly. They raided his clinic, arrested him, charged him. In the end, he was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. And he had to pay back a huge amount of money.
45 years. It reflects the seriousness of what he did. Not just the financial fraud, but the harm he caused to all those patients. And the money he has to pay back, it'll never truly compensate the victims. But it's another level of accountability.
And all of this whole unbelievable story, it took place in Michigan. So to recap, we've looked at this really shocking case of Dr. F, this oncologist driven by greed who went to these extreme lengths to get rich, diagnosing healthy people with cancer, putting them through awful treatments, all for money.
And it went on for so long. But then we have Monica, her chance encounter with Dr. So. Dr. So's suspicions and his decision to investigate. And then George, the office manager, who bravely gathered evidence and went to the authorities.
And ultimately, Dr. F faced justice. 45 years in prison. This case really makes you think about trust, right? The trust we put in our doctors and the terrible things that can happen when that trust is broken.
Absolutely. I mean, this was a complete betrayal. A doctor exploiting his patients for his own gain. It forces us to confront the fact that even systems designed to protect us, they can be vulnerable.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. What does this story make you think about? About the healthcare system, about being more involved in your own healthcare. Maybe even getting a second opinion sometimes. Not because you don't trust doctors, but because it's about protecting yourself, taking control of your own health.